You know your daddy's out on bond, don't you?
So what?
Looks like he's been cooking again.
I know that's charges you laid on him, but you ain't proved it on him. You gotta prove it every time.
Well, that won't be no hard thing to do. But that ain't even why I'm here. His court date's next week, and I can't seem to turn him up.
Maybe he sees you and ducks.
It could be. But where you all come into this is, he put this house here and your timber acres up for his bond.
He what now?
Jessup signed over everything. If he doesn't show at trial, see, the way the deal works is, you all gonna lose this place. Got some place to go?
I'll find him.
Girl, I've been looking.
I said I'll find him.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Lay a Kick. A Coen brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel. Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeak. There's so many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods, and we are just about halfway through our cinematic and alphabetic tour of the United States. Last week, we were way down south with Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger in Mississippi 4 in the Heat of the Night. And this week, we're back up in the Ozarks in the Show Me State. And although we're not covering a sports movie, I have bad news for the bears in this state, for it is illegal here to drive with an uncaged bear, and it is also illegal to wrestle a bear here in the land of Zion, a name given to the state by Joseph Smith. This is the birth state of gastronomically named actors John Hamm, Fred Berry, and Ginger Rogers. And speaking of food, this state is the birthplace of toasted ravioli, which was developed in the state's most populous city, Kansas City. But despite what certain former presidents may think, toasted ravioli isn't a delicacy from the state of Kansas, but rather Missouri, where we find ourselves on this episode, though we are more specifically going into the rural outskirts of Branson. And in the style of Branson's own Yakov Smirnoff, in rural Missouri, winter bones you. Dan, have you ever been to Missouri?
No, I have not been boned by winter in Missouri. No.
I feel okay. I mean, I've been to Branson. I have not been to Branson. I've been to Missouri a few times. I have not actually stopped in Branson, and I feel like that's the place to go. I feel like it's like the entertainment capital of the world, I think is what it calls itself.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's where Winter's Bone is set around and.
Outside of Branson.
Right.
But in the Branson area.
Because, of course, Winter's Bone would naturally be the, tourism appeal that let's just cut right to the chase, a tour of Winter's Bone filming locations.
I wouldn't say that it's likely the most popular attraction, the filming locations of Winter's Bone, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who's willing to be like, hey, do you want to go to the lake? I don't know.
Didn't it happen by that tree? No, it's by the other tree.
Yeah, pretty much.
So great. Yeah. Missouri. No, never been. So you've been to Missouri. What has brought you to Missouri?
Well, a couple of things. I went to a wedding in St. Louis with I went with my dear friend Louise, who I host the I Have a Great Idea But I'll Never Do It podcast with, which we're getting back going. We kind of sometimes take 2-year breaks and then all of a sudden pop back into it, and we're getting back into it. So we went. She had a friend who was getting married in St. Louis, and had a +1, and I was like, I'll see you there. And it was summertime. It was very hot. And I remembered, the day after the wedding, we went and we walked in through this one neighborhood and went to this brunch buffet kind of place. And there was live music, and it was a lot of fun. And I thought that it was a really cool town for the, 10 seconds I was there. And then I spent some time in Springfield, Missouri. I actually dated somebody who lived there, and we were dating long distance, and so I went out a few times. And that's a cool part of the world. I enjoyed the time that I was hanging out there. So yeah, I spent a good amount of time in Missouri, which is not something I ever thought I would say about myself. That never occurred to me that Missouri would be,
You
taking
never
up
know
a chunk of my life.
Right. No, you never know when these things are gonna come in handy. You never know when you just on a whim go to a wedding in St. Louis or St. Louis that you're going to be talking about it on a podcast, and it will give you some perspective that your co-host does not have on the state. Though one of my very close friends from high school, Stephanie, lives in Missouri, Columbia. Columbia, Missouri. Yeah.
I don't know where Columbia is, but
Columbia or Columbus. I think Columbia.
Okay.
Missouri.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah. So lives there, and I have not been out to visit, but she
it's
still
a really
lives there, so.
It's a really fascinating state. I think I had spoken about when I had been out to Arkansas on our Mud episode when we were talking Arkansas film. And, Arkansas borders Missouri, and, the Ozarks are kind of nestled in that chunk of land. And I went once to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, because it was close by to the, I think that actually it's not too far from Branson. But it's, that Ozarky part of the state. And, it's cool.
All right. Yeah. So definitely not, I wouldn't mind hitting up St. Louis sometime. I was, when I was 19, in a community theater production of the musical Meet Me in St. Louis.
Oh,
so
okay.
In that, theatrically, I have been, and in fact lived there, being a father of 4 at age 19 in this play.
Yeah.
Yes, in this play.
In the play.
No, in reality, I have not been there.
Well, Meet Me in St. Louis came up when I was asking around. I checked in with my my ex-girlfriend who lives in Missouri to see what films we might want to cover for our Missouri episode. And the ones that she mentioned were Meet Me in St. Louis and Winter's Bone. 2 very different vibes. And
on
of course, there's a lot
maybe,
of other... Well, there's...
I'm kidding.
Vibe-wise, we're talking very, very different. And, other movies came up like Waiting for Guffman, but since we had just done Drop Dead Gorgeous,
right.
And even though we love Waiting for Guffman, it just felt like a little too similar. And I think that, well, for me, this was my first time watching Winter's Bone. Dan, was it the same for you too?
It was my first time watching it all the way through. I had started watching it once before and just wasn't in the right mood for it.
You got to be in the right mood.
You have to be in the right mood, or you have to get yourself in the right mood because you need to watch it so you can talk about it on the podcast.
Well, that's another one.
It's a tricky movie to be in the right mood for. It's interesting though.
I think that it's more about like right now I have not had the kind of day where I should be watching something that's a downer. When you're having one of those days, you just need to watch something completely goofy. But if you're having a day where you're just like, all right, this day's been fine. You know what? I think I'm going to put on something that's going to maybe move me emotionally, make me think a little bit about the way other people live their lives. And, here we go. It's Winter's Bone time.
And, appropriately, as it is Academy Award season, the Academy Awards will possibly have occurred.
No, this comes out tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. So
when we're recording this.
Yes. So then the Academy Awards will not have yet occurred, but Winter's Bone came out in 2010, and that was the first year they nominated, or no, 2009 was the first year they nominated like multiple, like more than 5 best pictures.
Like 10. I think they upped it to 10, right?
Yeah, that they did 10. And I think this was like the second. And part of that was so that movies like Winter's Bone could perhaps get that recognition. I mean, also at the time it was largely attributed to The Dark Knight. So
Right.
opposite end of the spectrum there, but still another type of movie that might not have gotten Academy Award recognition, at least in the Best Picture category. And it took about another 10 years or so. I think Black Panther being the first comic book adaptation to get a Best Picture nomination. But so Winter's Bone got nominated.
4 nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor for John Hawkes, and Best Adapted Screenplay. So not too shabby, and I don't disagree with those nominations.
No.
I think that it's a pretty freaking solid movie right here.
Yeah. It's a solid movie. Absolutely. Yeah. It's right. It's not the showiest movie in the world, but I think especially at this,
despite it being in the show me state.
Well, yeah, true, but not, yeah. Well, yeah, what gets shown is gritty and
we are likely to be spoiling things, so because I don't know, I feel like you can't talk about this movie properly without talking about how it ends.
No. Yeah. We'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about some of the stuff that happens more towards the end.
Yeah.
Kind of.
We'll give a warning when we get closer to that in case anybody listening hasn't seen Winter's Bone. Should I do a synopsis while we're kind of just getting into it?
So, John, before we get into the synopsis, I was curious because it is Oscar season, and I don't know that we'll have an opportunity to talk about it again before the awards. What I'm curious to know, I know you've seen most of the nominees. I have seen enough to have a conversation about it.
Sure, yeah.
So what are you thinking? Like, what are your picks? What do you want? What do you want to win versus like what do you think will win?
Okay. Here, I'm just going to pull up the list of all the nominations so that I am fully informed. And so for Best Picture, I mean, I think that everybody probably assumes that Oppenheimer is going to win. That's the one that I assume will win. The ones that I think should win, I would love it if Poor Things won or Anatomy of a Fall. I loved Zone of Interest. I don't think that it's like the best of the year. It certainly knocked me off my socks. I thought that it was incredible. The Holdovers I thought was really fantastic. I just don't think that it was the best of the year. I thought American Fiction was good, just not the best of the year. Past Lives I thought was really fantastic. I think that it actually just got added to Hulu or Amazon Prime, one of those. So that's available.
It's been on Canopy actually for a while.
Oh, has it really?
Canopy or Hoopla, yeah.
It's really fantastic. It's really, really good. I thought that Killers of the Flower Moon was good, but not amazing. And Maestro just didn't work for me. But if Anatomy of a Fall or Past Lives wins, that would be incredible. It's going to be Oppenheimer, which I really liked. But yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you there on the Best Picture front. I've been rewatching Oppenheimer. I haven't fully gotten through the rewatch, but just because in the theater I had a hard time following it, and the score was a lot for me in the theater. I've been enjoying it more at home.
Yeah.
So I feel like I understand Oppenheimer winning Best Picture. I'm with you. I would love to see Poor Things or Anatomy of a Fall. I'm beginning to see like Yorgos Lanthimos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm kind of starting to see him in the same vein as like I love Stanley Kubrick, and I'm starting to see him in that vein of a filmmaker who makes bold choices, but fully realized and fully thought out bold choices. And I haven't seen all of his films. I've seen The Lobster, The Favorite, and Poor Things, and especially The Favorite and Poor Things had those qualities, especially Poor Things.
They have a visual signature for sure.
Right. But what I really appreciate about him, about his films, is that there's a reason. There's a reason for everything, and it all ties in together to character, to plot, to theme. And it's just a very fulfilling experience. And it's not like a one-note experience. Like, for example, I thought another Best Picture nominee, Barbie, I thought it was great.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mention Barbie.
Right. Yeah. I thought Barbie was great. I thought it was fantastic. And I thought it definitely was above and beyond what anyone would have expected when you first read the news. Oh, they're making a Barbie movie. This is right. So brilliant on so many levels. But I felt like I kind of had the same kind of like cheery experience the whole way through the Barbie movie. Whereas with Poor Things, it was an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
To use the critical cliche, but also just a roller coaster of experience of like, there were moments where I thought like, I don't know if I like this. And then there were moments where I liked it all the more for all the parts where I felt like, I don't know if I like this. Anatomy of a Fall, I appreciate so much the storytelling of it and exactly how measured it is in providing the audience what the audience needs to stay engaged, but not overdoing it. And the performances all across the board are fantastic. And I actually like, it's interesting because I had a moment as I was watching it, and I was maybe 2/3 of the way through, when I remembered like, oh wow, I haven't even thought about the direction of this film. And that to me says so much about the direction. So it's kind of the opposite, where like with Yorgos, it's like, oh, like the vision, like where the director seems to be very present throughout the film. Anatomy of a Fall was like,
right
there, the director disappeared, it felt. And I mean, of course, now Justine Triet is not someone whose work I'm as familiar with, so that's a factor as well. But anyway, agree with you on those. Maestro, like, I have a lot of respect for Bradley Cooper, and I really like Bradley Cooper, but Maestro felt too much like kind of an ego thing. There's a lot about Maestro that is good, and it's like, it's watchable. It's good. It's just not a Best Picture to me.
And we never had the question answered of who abandoned Snoopy in the vestibule. That's all I want to know.
Between Snoopy and Snoop, it's
I know.
Oscar season.
Big year for dogs named Snoop.
So, and then I haven't watched Past Lives yet, and I have not yet seen Zone of Interest, but otherwise, like,
if we're talking about movies that you need to be in a particular mood for, talking Winter's Bone, Zone of Interest is that times 50.
Yeah, as I've heard. So, but I'm very interested in seeing it, and I want to go there. It hasn't happened yet. It will at some point. I loved The Holdovers. Felt as you did American Fiction, good, not great. Killers of the Flower Moon, I might have enjoyed. See, I need to stop reading books or listening to audiobooks, because I listened to the audiobook and heard like kind of the whole story, and then watched the movie and felt that had it adhered more to the book, it might. I mean, it's kind of like, Scorsese on his, in my opinion, like a mediocre Scorsese is great compared to anything else. Also, I feel like, again, same thing after I watched The Irishman, is like we do need some limits on running time there.
Well, I feel like a long running time can be fine if it doesn't feel like it's a long running time. But Killers of the Flower Moon, The Irishman, like those felt their length.
Right.
And that's not when it's being used, as a strength.
Well, and actually, and I'll make one more. We're not going to, sit on this topic for much longer. But the other thing about the book is that the book actually reveals things differently so that it's a more engaging mystery. Yeah, it's true. It's real life. It happened.
Yeah.
But the book does a really great job of laying it out in a way where you're following things as they, you're learning things as kind of the investigators learned them, whereas the film, which puts DiCaprio kind of in that protagonist seat and the character who we're kind of seeing a lot of things through, we know what he knows when he knows it.
Yeah.
And that ruined a lot of it for me. The shifting of ages in it was like him and Plemons should have just swapped roles.
Yeah. And that, I think that'd be fantastic. I mean, we love Jesse Plemons here on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Yes. Oh boy.
We're
Plemonade
big
all
fans.
day.
And also Brendan Fraser. I mean, I'm glad to
he was
see
great.
him. When you have a movie and Jesse Plemons doesn't show up until 2 hours into it,
Right.
you know that you've got a problem. You showcase that talent.
Well,
and when Brendan Fraser comes in like 2.5 hours into the movie,
but
it's
he
just
may,
like,
but
what are we doing here?
But it's quite an arrival when he does.
And he's great.
And I have to say, and De Niro is great, but I feel like I've also seen De Niro give this. We've pretty much seen De Niro give every performance at this point.
Yeah.
But and he's great at this. But at this point, I'm more interested in the type of De Niro performance that we get in a film like Silver Linings Playbook, or the other one with Jennifer Lawrence, Joy.
I don't really remember his. I was just talking about Joy the other day. I think I've only seen it when it first came out, and I haven't seen it since. So I don't really remember his role in that.
I mean, go giving him an Oscar for it, but yeah. So it just kind of was very. And Lily Gladstone is excellent.
She is excellent. She's very good. I'm glad that she is getting quite a moment and will only do good things for her career and our likeliness of seeing her in more stuff in the future.
Well, yeah, she's got another film.
I just want to quickly say about Killers of the Flower Moon, the one big thing that really took me out of it, it's like it could keep me going, but at the very end when Martin Scorsese shows up in it, I was like, no.
Yeah. That whole deal was an odd choice.
It was awkward.
That didn't work.
So you're saying Lily Gladstone? Yeah,
Gladstone.
She has another one that's out recently.
Right. I think it was at Sundance, and but yeah, hopefully, the exposure she's getting from this brings more attention to her other work.
Yeah, Fancy Dance is the other one. Directed by Erica Tremblay. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So
edited by my buddy Rob Wilson.
Oh, okay then. All right, Rob Wilson. Yeah. Well, way to go.
Yeah,
well, now
great editor.
Lily Gladstone can bring more attention to his work as well. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So that's where we are on the best picture front. I for best actor, I'm holding out. I would love to see Paul. This is a tough year because there are a lot of people who I really love who are nominated, but I don't necessarily know that they will win or necessarily gave the best performance. It sounds like how do you pronounce his name?
Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy will probably win.
Yeah.
And upon my rewatch of Oppenheimer, I approve. that decision.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's fantastic. And looking back on a lot of his other work, it's like, okay, he's really bringing something to this that we haven't seen him do before. I feel like I'm in a minority. I haven't seen Peaky Blinders, so perhaps he's giving some of the same thing there. But he's not. But
I've
having
seen some
enjoyed
of Peaky Blinders. Yeah, different. Performance.
I mean, he's of course great in all the other Nolan movies that he's been in. I personally love the movie Breakfast on Pluto. I thought that he was really fascinating in that one. That one is, I think is worth a revisit, because so much has changed in the world climate about people who are transgender, or I can't remember exactly how
non-binary,
right, gender fluid.
Yes.
And I'd be curious to just kind of see it from that angle. You're right. I love Jeffrey Wright. I love Paul Giamatti. I thought that Paul Giamatti was fantastic.
I really would love Paul Giamatti to win.
And did he win the SAG award for Best Actor? I feel like he got one of the Best Actor awards in this cycle. Because there's the picture that was going around of him with his award eating at In-N-Out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna look that up really quick to see.
It's as well you're looking at. It's the same thing like Best Actress in a leading role. I am a huge fan of Annette Bening's work, and she's great in Naiad. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it, and like, and I don't know. I haven't seen Sandra Huller in anything else, so of course.
Well, you'll see her when you watch Zone of Interest.
Well, yes.
So there's that.
But but in terms of an actor kind of disappearing into a character, it feels like Annette Bening and Diana Nyad kind of met in the middle. It does feel like the gutsy Annette Bening performance, even though it really suits that story well. Sorry,
Paul Giamatti won the Golden Globe for The Holdovers.
Yes.
But that's Best Actor Musical or Comedy, where there's also the Best Actor Drama. So
Yes, exactly. So, but going back to like the Best Actress thing, and same thing with Lily Gladstone, haven't seen her in much else. I would personally love to see Sandra Huller. I think of the five, Sandra Huller or Emma Stone.
It's going to be Emma Stone, but I mean, Sandra Huller is phenomenal in Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest, as you'll see. I feel like, she has that incredible 1-2 punch this year for her performances.
But Emma Stone is an actress who, we're very familiar with, and she doesn't necessarily.
We've seen a lot of range.
We have seen a lot of range from Emma Stone, and I feel like this character in Poor Things, it's not just like doing something quirky. Like, I feel like when I look at the character, like that is a fully realized character, and she is really portraying it with nuance, and it's not just like, a pretty actress, a pretty American actress doing something British and weird, give her an Oscar. No, that's a deserving performance right there.
Yeah. Totally.
Hands down. And I begrudgingly say it, but more so than Annette Bening in Naiad.
Annette, with biopics, it's especially challenging because you're having to conform to a real person's mannerisms, and it's a totally different performance than you're going to get from something like Poor Things, where you're inventing a brand new thing that's never really existed before.
Well, right.
Yeah. And for something like, I mean, just looking at, Carey Mulligan and Maestro, Annette Bening and Naiad, Lily Gladstone and Killers of the Flower Moon, even though Lily Gladstone's character in Killers of the Flower Moon isn't like unknown, like there's not a lot of, there's no like videos to watch of that person,
right.
It's not the same as somebody like
Diana Nyad,
and Diana Nyad, who Annette Bening is doing such a great job of portraying, it's really just putting on their affectations and kind of slipping into their skin and their personality, which is a very divisive personality to begin with. So I think that if there was a separate category for like best actress in a biopic, like most accurate portrayal of a person in a biopic, like, that's when we'd be getting into a bigger conversation about Annette Bening and Nyad.
Holt McElhenney as Fritz von Erich in The Iron Claw should win that award right there.
I couldn't tell you.
Well, actually, no, Cillian Murphy and Oppenheimer.
Cillian Murphy and Oppenheimer. Yeah.
Anyway,
seriously.
Anything else you want to? And I have to say the one more that I'm going to say I have a strong opinion on is I think score should absolutely go to Poor Things.
I loved the score in Poor Things. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking to see what else.
Like I did not like no other
best original score.
It's like Indiana Jones is nominated.
Yeah, which it won't get. Killers of the Flower Moon probably won't get it.
Oh, that was my second choice.
American Fiction won't get it. I see. You and I have different feelings on the Oppenheimer score. For you, it was challenging. For me, it was something exciting because when I was watching Oppenheimer, one of the things that I noticed that made it different from other biopics or, movies that are depicting historical things that go, it's like it goes outside of the formula. And instead of it being like, okay, and then in this scene, this music starts happening, and then that ends, and then it's the next scene, and you have this score that's going into it. This really had a full, movement of taking you through this story in all of its different points in history. And the way that it carried through from scene to scene and time period to time period, I felt was really captivating. And I felt really added a lot to the story and the way that it was being told. So it really worked for me. And I understand how it would be distracting for some other people. But for me, it worked. But to your point, Poor Things had a truly exceptional score that you're not going to hear in anything else.
It is perfectly tailored to that film.
Absolutely.
So
I just wanted to, I don't want to talk about it too much, but best supporting actress, I feel like Divine Joy Randolph is the way to go.
Yes.
I thought that Jodie Foster was fantastic in Nyad.
Yeah.
But I think that it's watching the footage of the real person and then just being like, oh, she nailed it. That goes a long way.
They also do make a very charismatic pair in Nyad.
They do. Yeah.
And Jodie Foster it was great to see Jodie Foster giving just a really upbeat fun performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then for best supporting actor, even though it's probably going to be Robert Downey Jr., he's been sweeping all of the other awards. I would love for it to be either Mark Ruffalo, because to see him play that character in Poor Things was really fun. Yes. Just like a complete ass and just a vile person. Or Ryan Gosling in Barbie. So much fun.
I am so with you there.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Watching that movie, I was just like, wow, he is doing something and he's doing it really well. And I have been just enjoying kind of going on that journey for Ryan Gosling portraying Ken. And I'm excited to watch him perform I'm Just Ken at the Oscars. That sequence in Barbie is transcendent. It's so good.
Yes. And Ryan Gosling, I mean, I love the Ryan Gosling kind of journey, not just recently, but going back to Drive and probably before that. But
Lars and the Real Girl,
The Nice Guy.
Yeah.
Nice Guys.
Oh, The Nice Guys is so good.
I love the Ryan, the Ryan Gosling, commitment.
What's the one where he's the teacher who's addicted to drugs?
Half Nelson.
Half Nelson is so good.
Yes.
He's great in that.
Oh, and he's got the student who sells the crack. Yeah. I saw that in the theater. Talk about movies you need to be in a certain mood for. That was before I became a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what inspired you?
I mean, of course, yes. I'm like, oh, if I don't even have to like leave work to buy crack. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I am please, no. Crack is whack. But yeah, I love that Ryan. I love what Ryan Gosling has been doing and everything he brought to that performance. But yes, he or Mark Ruffalo absolutely is so deserving of it, if not an award, all of the praise in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're deep into this episode and we haven't done our synopsis yet. So why don't we do that real quick and, really get into a little bit more about Winter's Bone. How does that sound?
Yep. Let's do it.
A southern Missouri meth chef named Jessup skips bail and the bondsman is out to claim his collateral, the house where his sick wife and 3 kids currently live. His eldest daughter, Ree, is the only person able to do what is right, find her father, dead or alive. She heads out on foot to speak to family and neighbors who may know his whereabouts, but is faced with nothing but aggression and threats urging her to stop her search. Knowing that she has no choice for the good of her young siblings, Ree risks her own life by continuing her journey to uncover the truth about her father. I mean, how else do you explain this movie?
That's it.
But it's really wild. And I love the fact that she's doing this all pretty much like on foot. You know, she doesn't have a way of getting around. She tries to get access to a truck, but that, doesn't work out. And there's like everybody around her is getting in her way.
Mm-hmm.
That she has some friends who are, doing their best, but even they are kind of stymied in their help for her. So, it's a really rough one. Jennifer Lawrence, I think is fantastic. Dan, thoughts?
I mean, yeah, especially looking at it as like Jennifer Lawrence in 2010, who really wasn't known yet. Yeah, I mean, even looking at her now, this is a great performance. Something that I imagine, most people might have trouble connecting to, and the complexities of this character, but does it wonderfully and really carries this movie.
Yeah,
really admirably.
Yeah, she has these things that are so important in her life, her siblings, her mom, who is physically unable to help her. And she knows if I don't do this, there's no one else to do it for me. And I have to take on this responsibility and not succumb to the way of life that is being kind of pushed on me by the people surrounding me. They're all just like being like, oh, you haven't developed the taste for meth yet? Too bad.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And, I will say their next door neighbors are kind of the only virtuous people around. The ones who, they take in the horse that they can't take care of anymore. They offer for them to use their wood splitter. They're there. And they offer things, but It's like, that's the way of life, is just like, you don't ask for stuff that should be offered to you. That's the line in the movie.
Never ask for what ought to be offered.
Yeah. And their neighbors are really fantastic. And I'm sure it's also just like, look, they've already offered so much. I can't possibly ask for any more, because that's a step too far. Yeah. And then of course, John Hawkes as her uncle, who is just perfect.
Teardrop.
I mean, teardrop. Yeah. And if you're going to be casting something that takes place in kind of the backwoods, John Hawkes is your guy.
Pretty good choice. you know, he kind of fits right into that milieu.
He's fantastic. Another one who I felt is so perfectly cast is Dale Dickey, who plays Marib. I'm sure it's short for like Maribel or something. Marib.
Oh, wait, is she the one?
She's the woman who eventually takes her to.
Yeah.
her father.
Oh, yeah. Fucks her up with the coffee. In that one scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I saw her come out with that mug and I was like, oh,
Yep.
that's gonna get tossed in a face.
Yep. But
Yeah.
it was really interesting, speaking of that character and also Ree, but the role that women play in this kind of like drug war,
Yeah.
like meth, like Ozark meth empire thing. And because the women are not necessarily like the cooks, but it's almost like they're the enforcers.
They're the tough. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
the ones who are kind of on the front lines of like keeping people away.
Because
And,
yeah, because it's all the women go with Ree and they take Ree when they finally, you know, well,
they
spoiler
mess her up real good.
well, yeah, and spoiler alert, take her to her father's body
Yes.
where it's
A
located.
devastating scene.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't come back from experiencing watching that scene.
No.
Yeah.
No, and that's Jennifer Lawrence, especially in that scene. We should probably be direct. We've already said there's spoilers about what we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah. So I also there's a couple of other people that I need to give shout outs to. So my friend Annie, who is, you know, the reason why I went out to Missouri a bunch, she knows some people who are in this movie who are absolutely wonderful actors and performers. So Beth Doman, who plays Alice, she's the other person in the boat. You know, when they go out,
Yeah.
she's got kind of like the wool hat on.
Yeah.
The poster is them in the boat, and it's just like, oh, cool. And she's apparently very funny, and a fantastic actor. And Maribeth Sisko, who is in the scene where Ree goes to the one house and there's this like, you know, bluegrassy band that's playing.
Oh, yeah.
And there's the woman who's singing, and that's Maribeth Sisko, who is a beloved musical treasure of the region, is what Annie said. So wanted to make sure to shout them out because, you know, they really, you know, Maribeth Sisko, you know, just singing a song in that band, like it really fills out the atmosphere of the region. And it's like, there's color to this part of the world. It has its own identity to it. And, you know, not everybody's just out there cooking meth and beating up people who are trying to find their fathers.
No,
you know,
yeah.
there's life going on. And
then
Beth Doman, who plays Alice, is, you know, she's so good. And in those scenes, you know, where they're, you know, we've just seen them. Well, we don't see them beat up Ree, but we see her, the aftermath of that. And then that boat scene. Woof.
Yeah. So and the boat scene is basically Ree's father is dead and his body is in the lake, and she has to, because Ree needs to prove to the bounty hunter that her father is dead.
Yeah.
And she's not going to bring up the whole body, but must remove his hands. Not only one hand, because it's believable that someone would cut off a hand to escape going back to prison, as we're told. But both hands, and that Ree has to do it
off the arms. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, it is. Wow. But going back to that folk circle. So when I was watching the movie, the first time I tried watching it, I'd fallen asleep. No offense to the movie. I was tired, but I fell asleep and I woke up during that scene, and was like, what is happening now? But there is quite a long-standing tradition, especially in regions like the Ozarks and Appalachia, of this type of folk music and like stories being told and passed down through song. I took a course in college, American folk song and ballad.
Oh, yeah?
American folklore and ballad, I think it was.
It's okay if you don't get it right, Dan. No one's quizzing you on something that happened like 30 years ago.
Well, I don't know if maybe Dr. Angus Gillespie is listening to this and is offended that I didn't remember the name of his course.
Dr. Angus Gillespie. What a name.
Dude,
I love it.
Dr. Gillespie was the man. Like, he spent an entire class session of that course was him telling dirty jokes, because he's like, well, that's part of like American folklore, American, like that might have, I took a couple of courses with him.
So I'm looking at his Rutgers University School of Arts and Sciences web page, Angus K. Gillespie, and courses taught the American West, the contemporary American myths and legends, and American folklore.
Yeah, so there was definitely a like something like folk song. Maybe it was part of the American folklore, but I remember we listened to a lot of that type of music and heard.
I think stories. That my version of Angus Gillespie, is that Angus Gillespie?
Yep.
I already closed his webpage. My version of that is Dr. David M. Jacobs, PhD, who taught my UFOs in American Society class at Temple University. Shout out Dr. David M. Jacobs, PhD. A real one.
Hey, college is great.
He shows up in a lot of those weird conspiracy theory documentaries where, you know, he has a theory about alien abduction and takeover. So he shows up in a lot of these documentaries, and it's always good to see him.
Magnificent.
And his white mustache. Yeah.
Lovely. I'll keep an eye out for him next time I'm watching like Ancient Aliens or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's been on Ancient Aliens. I think he has. So next time you put it on.
Next time I put that on, yeah. I've probably seen that white mustache up on my TV a few times.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going back to Winter's Bone, I really feel like this movie, you know, it does a really good job of showing you that, yes, there is this, it's a very real problem in that part of the country, you know, meth manufacturing. And but it also shows you the reality that of the people who live there who don't want to be part of that. You know, we see Ree meeting with the army recruiter, and I realize that that's also kind of a way to, you know, get money to save her house, being like, I'm not going to find my dad, so what other options do I have than, you know, just try to get $40,000 any way I can, and that's the only option, you know, to get that kind of money legit.
That's a hard scene to watch too, and the recruiter is really trying to. And I read that was an actual army recruiter, and that he pretty much like treated that as an actual. Yeah, that's how it was played. But
he was fantastic. Oh my God, you feel terrible. Yeah.
As she's just asking those questions, and you know what the answers are going to be too, as she's asking like when, and you're like, oh no, honey, that's not how it works.
Yeah. That's a really tough scene to watch. But it's such an incredible contrast when you're watching the scene in like that fluorescent light room,
right?
You know, everything's bright and clean, and she's, you know, it's kind of just like the possibility of salvation is just kind of ripped away from her, and to go back to this like dirty, dusty world of these people who are just trying to beat the shit out of her to get her to stop asking questions. And nobody seems to care that, you know, she's going to lose her house. I mean, there's the one guy who offers to take her brother,
Yeah.
And then when she's old enough, the little sister. But I think that was that little Arthur. I'm trying to remember which character that was that did that. It's been a minute since I watched the movie.
I don't think it was. It might have been. Was it Floyd and Gail?
Oh, it might have been Floyd and Gail, but it was. Yeah, and it was just like, there's really nobody to help her. That's not really help.
Actually, something that I had read about Little Arthur. So in the novels, there's the author of the novels, Daniel Woodrell, who is from Springfield, Missouri, and all of his novels are set in the Ozarks. I don't think they're all connected, but they are all at least connected by setting. And read that in the novel, it's revealed that at some point prior to this, Little Arthur had given Rhee hallucinogenic mushrooms and raped her.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's
not a good dude.
No. So Little Arthur is
terrible. I feel like it's okay that we were spared a scene
Oh,
like that.
We
in the
don't need
movie.
it because you can tell, you know what you need to know, which is that he's terrible. She doesn't trust him. And she's the protagonist, and we know, like, she's doing everything for the right reasons and the right motivations. So we trust her, and we're like, okay, if she thinks he's a bad guy, he's a bad guy. That's
for sure.
That's how it is. But yeah, it's like that's the vibe you get, though, is like all these people are in a situation where they are just doing what they can do to get by, and that there's no real opportunity for any type of mobility other than just like being, I guess, being the most well-off people in that area. You know, if being the meth, the meth kingpin rather than just the dealer.
Yeah.
But
it's
that's
rough.
I mean, that's why the legality doesn't even really come into question of it, because it's just like that these people are either cooking meth or taking it to get by, except for, like you said, there's the people who are just like, we live here, this is our lives, and it is what it is, but we don't need that.
Absolutely. And I feel like those scenes, like, when she does go to the house and there's kind of that party going on and there's the band playing, and it's just like, there's a lot of pride for the heritage of, living there and being from there, that, not a lot of people are just going to up and move away because they feel an obligation to the region. And
also, what resources do they have to up and move away?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, but it's like, it's not even an option that runs through their minds.
They're not thinking about,
not to generalize. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't seem like, it seems like they have accepted their reality, and they're just saying, like, okay, what can I do to make this reality the best reality possible for me?
Yeah. Yeah. So, dear listeners, on this podcast, we talk about kind of how we would continue the legacy for a movie. And Dan, what would you have in mind for something like Winter's Bone?
Yeah, really good question. I think with Winter's Bone, where I feel like it would be most useful to go would be backwards in time. Mm-hmm. You do get the sense that, like, the people, I agree. Like, the people who live here, they have been here, or their families have been here for a while. And I do think it would be worth taking a look and saying, okay, well, what was 20 years before this? How did things get to where they are? What was it before it was meth? Taking a look at how, viewing this community, and, perhaps how the war in Vietnam impacted it.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
imagine you would have had, young people from this community either being drafted or enlisting.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
what does that do? Yeah, and just hearing or seeing like different, like Jessup and Teardrop. What's their story?
Yeah, there's something about the movie that makes me, that I really appreciate about it, and that's kind of how like we never see Jessup. We only see one of his arms, really, and it's after he's been dead for quite some time, and we see him in a picture, like an old picture, and we don't know exactly what Ree's mom was like and kind of how she got to be the way that she is. And I am glad that, it's like the less we see and the less we know, the better. It serves, the story a little bit better that the focus is on Ree. And we're not getting, things muddy by going too deep into, oh, well, what did happen to her mom? It's like, that's not important.
Right.
Her mom is that way. And that's
We
what's
know
important.
what we need to know.
We know what we need to know. We don't need to see a flashback of Jessup, getting mixed up with something with the meth people. Like, that's not important. And I'm glad for that. And so, I agree. I think that something, I mean, prequel is kind of a loaded word that I don't think necessarily applies, because I don't necessarily need to see like how Jessup and Teardrop get involved with like the meth scene or anything like that. I feel like something about the region and about meth being introduced into the region is probably pretty valuable. And maybe we have Teardrop and Jessup like in the sidelines somewhere, but not focused on them. I mean, it's and who's to say exactly when things got started, if they would have even been there at the time. But like, I mean, meth, probably came about at the time when they would have been kind of getting involved. So who knows? But I do think that, yeah, the way that region was impacted by the introduction of meth, I think it would be pretty fascinating. And also, I will say, it really, Dan, did you ever watch the show Ozark?
No, I attempted.
It's really good. If you ever have the opportunity to give it another try, I know your time is limited and there's a lot of other stuff out there, but it is really, really amazing. And the directions that it goes, with, it's all about drug production and sales and money laundering in the Ozarks. And, this is more, that one is more specifically about how like cartels are involved and, really taking place in more of a off-season, at times, resort part of the Ozarks, not so much, the deep backwoods, although there are the families that are kind of there year round, who we see in the way that their lives kind of get mixed into the drug world. And Julia Garner, who is kind of like the representative that we're kind of siding with at times, as she's fantastic and she does an excellent job, kind of living in that world, but kind of seeing a way out of it, but in only like in her own way, kind of. It's really well done, and it's a really fantastic show. So check that out if you haven't. But I mean, that takes place present day essentially, so it's not exactly the same as what we're talking about. But yeah, right. I think that kind of dipping into the past is the way to go. Yeah. Yeah. But dear listeners, if you have an idea of another way that this can be brought back, ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
This is not one that I don't see this becoming a musical.
No,
now that I've said that, we're gonna find out like who's like Richard Marx is writing Winter's Bone the musical or something. I don't.
Does he write musicals?
No.
Okay, you just picked that name out of nowhere.
You know what? Every now and again,
like
it's
Richard
nice
Marx.
to remind people about. I do like Richard Marx. You know what? He's got a solid handful of hits. I like Hazard. You know what? Actually, Hazard is very. The song "Hazard" by Richard Marx could fit into this. I feel like Hazard might have been somewhere in like Missouri or Arkansas. But yes, the Richard Marx epic "Hazard," which I believe there's supposed to be a part 2 of that we never got, but that's for me and Richard to discuss.
Where's Richard Marx from? Oh,
I don't.
That's right. He's married to Daisy Fuentes.
Yes. Richard Marx should have known better.
Chicago. Okay.
From Chicago. Okay. But like should have known better is a fantastic song. Hold On to the Nights. I'm having trouble coming up with Richard Marx songs, but
he's great. Nobody's denying that. I know that we're trying to go for a tone shift in this episode.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of because it's always like who's writing the music, and it's someone who had been a pop star. Like Barry Manilow just had the musical on Broadway. So
did he?
Yeah.
I'm not up on musicals. I'll be honest.
I am. I mean, I'm not as up as I could be, but up enough to know that Barry Manilow recently had a musical on Broadway that was called Harmony. I think it was called Harmony.
Okay.
Based on a true story.
I mean, I suppose that I could see a dramatic stage play that, is somewhat Winter's Bony, but there's a lot.
I feel like it loses
too much.
It loses its impact. Part of the impact is being in that setting.
Being outside.
Yeah. And I think, film is really the best way. I don't know that this is it's a good story, but it's also about, like you said, the journey and how she's doing everything on foot. And that's all much more impactful on film. I just don't think it would work on stage.
Yeah. And shout out to Deborah Granick, the director. Yes. Absolutely fantastic. And I think that she also was, she and her creative partner adapted it.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. Yes, Deborah Granick and Anna Rossellini.
Now, Deborah Granick, by the way, and this leads us into a little. Deborah Granick, by the way, not from the area. She's from Massachusetts.
No. Yeah.
Attended Brandeis University, which incidentally is the college that accepted our brother Scott, even though he did not apply to it.
No, what episode were we talking about? Orange County. We're doing an episode on Orange County, because our brother's high school guidance counselor, who was it Lily Tomlin in Orange County?
Yeah.
Is essentially as deft as that character who, instead of sending it to like Boston University, sent his application to Brandeis and they accepted him. It's like, I'm sure that there was something that said Boston University on there somewhere. But no, Brandeis was just like, we'll take him.
But yes, Deborah Granick, it went there intentionally. And
she also did Leave No Trace.
Yes.
Which was filmed out here in the Portland area.
I haven't seen that, but I've heard nothing but praise.
Yeah, it's with
Ben
what's
Foster?
Her name? Thomason McKenzie.
Yeah.
Mackenzie Thomason. McKenzie. No, Thomason McKenzie.
Yes. No, Mackenzie Thomason.
It seems like it should be the other way around, but it's not.
Yeah.
Who's fantastic in Jojo Rabbit, Last Night in Soho. And I really wanted to see, is it Eileen that she was in recently with Anne Hathaway?
That's the new one with Anne Hathaway. Yeah.
Yeah, which looks really good.
Looks
thriller.
Creepy.
Yeah. So, Dan, before I get into this kind of next bit, I just wanted to let everybody know that if you are a fan of listening to or watching podcasts on YouTube, we're getting the wheels turning for getting ourselves on there. I also wanted to mention, as of the day we're recording this, iPhone just released a new system update to the software, and the podcast app, the native Apple Podcast app, now has transcriptions. And so I checked our show and the transcriptions work, and you can search for stuff by transcription. It's pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
So for anybody who likes to follow along with the written word, that's a cool option. I don't know if any other podcast apps are doing that, but it's pretty cool.
That's fantastic. Bravo.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I'm excited to kind of dig into that a little bit more. So yeah, I check out our link tree. We got all sorts of fun stuff on there. And one other quick note about Missouri is that it is where he wasn't born there, but Brad Pitt grew up in Springfield, Missouri. And we're going to be talking about him a lot on our next episode. Dan, do you want to tell everybody why?
Oh, I sure do. Because on our next episode, we're going to Montana, the big country. Such a big country, we need to talk about 2 different movies. But that's because...
I can't believe we're doing that.
That's because in the early to mid 90s, Brad Pitt starred in 2 movies set in the approximately the 1920s, set in Montana. So we are going to be looking at 1992's A River Runs Through It, directed by Robert Redford, starring Brad Pitt and Craig Sheffer, Tom Skerritt. And then 1994's Legends of the Fall, directed by Ed Zwick, starring Brad Pitt, Aidan Quinn, Henry Thomas, Anthony Hopkins, Julia Ormond. And A River Runs Through It also stars the great state of Montana. Legends of the Fall stars Canada as Montana.
As Montana. Yeah. And Dan, do you want to tell everyone else another thing that, ties these 2 in common with each other?
Oh, yes. Sorry. It is the Brad Pitt
apologize.
Early to mid 90s Columbia TriStar Withholding and Demanding Father double feature. Am I set in Montana? In the 1920s.
I can't wait to talk about these. It's going to be such a mess. Watching them, I was just like, oh man. You could play these 2 movies both at the same time.
Yes.
And,
I can't wait to talk about it because I had that same thought.
They probably have the same exact score. Or their scores are interchangeable. It's really fascinating. And, Brad Pitt, you were young and hungry, and you were just starting to star in motion pictures, and you decided, hey, I did it once, I'll do it again.
Love that Montana wilderness, even if it's in Canada.
Well, Dan, this is not going to sound very fun. But as you are walking through the backwoods of rural Missouri, searching for our father, I wish you a good journey.
It better be a good journey.